Welcome everybody to linuxacademy.com. My name is Terry, and in today's course we continue our preparation for the Linux Foundation Certified System Administrator. What we're going to be talking about now is we're going to be talking about how to configure Apache logs. Now, regardless of whether you're running a CentOS or a Debian or Ubuntu or Red Hat based distribution, although the directories that your HTTP configuration is in, the log formats apply equally well across all of the distribution types. So we're just going to concentrate on the log formatting for Apache. This video will assume that you've installed Apache and configured it so that the service is running, whether it's a sysvinit or systemd process. One of the things that you can do to double check that HTTP is running is you can do a PSAUX and grep for HTTP. You can also do a quick telnet on localhost on port 80. And if you happen to know the IP address of your system, which we have here for the local, but I've got a public IP address as well that I can search, and I get the test HTTP server web page. Now what we're interested in is the log format that is defined within the HTTP configuration file. Now, when we talk about vhosts, individual sites, we can talk a little bit about the log format that can be overridden on a vhost perspective, meaning that you can have a different access log format for each named vhost. And when we go over named vhosts in a later video, we'll talk about that. But we're just talking about the default log format in the HTTP configuration file. So since we are running on a CentOS 7 system here, we're going to go to the etc httpd directory. And as we've seen before, the configuration file httpd.conf is in the conf directory. So if we take a look here and do a vim on httpd.conf, we'll notice that we have, towards the top here, we have some log format types. And this is anytime that you are defining a log format, you're going to define a format, and then you're going to give it a name that you can refer to it by. And it's defined in the if module for the log configuration module. So as long as, which Apache does by default, the logging module is enabled, then the log format that you choose can be defined within this section. Now, I do have to let you know that there's two primary log files in HTTP for Apache, and that's the error log and that's the access log, and they're in var log. Now, the primary difference between the two is the error log is what it is. You can't customize the error log. However, the access log can be customized in any format that you want within the custom log format section defined in the Apache documentation. We're going to take a look at what it looks like. So here we'll find that we have a log format that we're referring to as combined, and we're referring to as common, and then combined IO. Now, what does that mean? Well, that means that I've got different log formats that I've defined as different names. So if I go and I do a search on access, I've got a couple of different locations. And you'll see that the log file is defined for access log as the logs, whichever the directory is defined, in this case var, so var logs access log. Right here, my custom log is access log, and the type of log that it is combined, which means that the contents of the access log will be formatted as this line right here. In this line right here, for example, H stands for the host name or the IP address of the remote request. L is the remote login name, whereas U is the remote user. T is the date and time when the request was received. R is the first line of the request to the server, whereas the S here, as bracketed, is the final status of the request. And then we've got the size of the response. In addition, we have some information about the referrer, where it came from, and the user agent that'll tell me things about the browser that the client connected with. So let's take a look at what the access log looks like. So if we go to var logs, or var log rather, the access log, cat access log, etc httpd logs should be a link to my log file. So access log, if we cat out the access log, we see exactly what we talked about. We see from a line perspective, we have information about the browser, we have the request, we have the originating IP, a date and a timestamp. So we have lots of information, and it looks like some of these also have blanks. You won't always get information for each of the field, but it tells us, here I've got an HTTP1 connection. Here it's an Apache internal dummy connection. I've got some different connections for Apple WebKit, etc., etc. It tells me a lot of information about that particular connection and the client that it connected from. So for example, when I was connected to this test page here, we actually were pulling HTTP 52.21.217.176, which is the IP address of the server that Apache is running on, and it came from IP address 99.198.189.168. At that time, that's the connection that I was coming from. So this gives us a lot of information about the clients that are connecting to our system, and we can also change that log format, for example, and then change the reference to the log format. So if we do an etc httpd configuration, and we edit the httpd.conf file, let's create a log format that just does a couple of things for us. Let's say log format, and we want to get the host that it's connecting to. So let's indicate that. Let's say the host that we're connecting to is this, and then we'll put a dash in. We'll separate our fields, connecting IP, and then we'll say for the remote log name rather, or the remote user. How about that? Connecting user, if we get the remote user ID. And in most cases you won't, but we do want to know the date and time, and we'll say here, and then what it was, the first line of the request that was sent to the server. What requested. Now that's all we're going to do here. We're simply changing the log format to be something that is easier to read. In this case, we're going to say the host, the connecting user, a date and time, and what's requested. And we'll call it my combined. So now if I go to the access log definition and find where it's defined as combined, I'm going to change this to be my combined. And then I'm going to write the file. And because I'm on a CentOS 7 system, I'm going to use the systemd command for systemctl restart httpd. Now, if I've created an error from within my configuration, then system control would tell me, and I'd be able to generate a status report based on the error that was generated. So now let's go ahead and we'll close this and open up a new window. We'll do a HTTP request to 52.21.217.176, and then let's go to another page that probably doesn't exist, but we'll see what comes up. So I've generated a little bit of traffic. So now if I go to the logs file and I look at my access log, which was just written to, let's tail the access log, and we should see that we get a host, 99, connecting user. We didn't get any information because we didn't log into the site. We do have a date and time stamp, And what was requested, it was just a get HTTP request for the default / or the index page. So you can customize your log file in any way, shape, or form that you want from an access perspective, because this can also give you the ability to more easily import these fields into a database and report on them. So the normal default log format gives you a lot of good information, but it's not delimited in any way that's easily importable. So if you're going to consume these log files from within a MySQL database or PostgreSQL or even better, a MongoDB database, because they're largely unstructured data that you just want to do general reporting on, you can put a delimited format that you can easily write scripts that periodically rotate the logs and pull the access log in, and you can get a full report of all of the users, of all the activity, the web pages, the users that are authenticating, whether it's an HTTP or HTTPS connection. You can provide all kinds of information about how your website is being accessed. And again, we're setting the default log format for the Apache instance here within the HTTP configuration file, but we can override that log format on a per site basis from within the vhost for a named site, which we'll go over when we talk about vhosts. But for setting up the Apache log files, that's all there is to it. My name is Terry for Linux Academy.